Okay, so to get started, you're going to need clay, you're going to need a paintbrush. That will be helpful as you start making coil. An optional item is your sponge, some sort of tool for scoring, which I have a potter's needle, but you can use really anything like a paper clip or an old toothbrush, something like that, a little cup for water, and some slip. So the first thing I'm going to do to get my cup started is I am going to make the slab base. So I'm just going to take a little bit of clay, kind of pat it out, and then I'm going to toss it like a stone. I'm going to flip it over. And then once I get it to the size I want, I'm going to use a cup, and I'm going to take my tool, and really anything circular that you want to use as a stencil is fine. And put your extra clay to the side, and this clay is really plastic, which is why it's sticking, which I should have known. So I'm going to start over since I just made a hot mess. Failure. Okay, and then I'm going to start with my coils. So I'm going to make my coils, a little bit of clay. I'm going to roll with open fingers. And if it starts getting flat on one side, I'm going to twist it a little bit. And then keep rolling. And while I'm doing this, I'm adding a little bit of pressure to kind of stretch the clay as I roll it, so that not only does it become more of a cylinder, but also it gets longer. And one of the tips that you want to hold on to throughout the course of this entire project is you want the diameter or the thickness of the coil to be consistent throughout the entire pinch pot. So whatever you start with, whether it be super, super thin or just kind of like a normal wall thickness, you want to kind of stick with that, okay? So you don't really want these coils to be more than 1/4 of an inch thick. If they're thicker than that, your whole piece is going to be really heavy, and it's going to take a long time to dry, which is a potential risk factor for blowing up, and we don't want that. Okay, so I'm ready for my first coil. So I have my little slab base here, and what I'm going to do first is I'm going to score where I'm going to attach. And you know, you can score as much as you need. And then I'm actually going to use my serrated kidney to scratch up the coil where I'm going to add it. And then I'm going to take a little bit of slip. Again, don't rub it in to the point where it's smooth, because then you've taken away your coiling. And then I'm going to add that on. And then the trick is to let it overlap slightly. And then I'm going to cut at an angle, move both parts, stick that together, and seam it. And then let's see if I can get another coil out of this. Nope, too small. So I'm going to go ahead and do that inside part. So what I'm doing is making a very thin coil to go into this crease, because as we go, we're gonna be smoothing out the inside and leaving the outside our coil. So I'm gonna intentionally make this a lot smaller than my first coil. And then I'm just gonna kind of cradle the outside while smoothing the inside. And you just want to keep doing that until you seam the bottom. All right, so there's the start of my coil. Now from here, I'm gonna keep building. I'm gonna pause and come back. Okay, so now you can see I've got several coils in a row of buttons. And now what I'm gonna do is take a tool, because as you build, you need to start smoothing the inside because you don't wanna get it too tall and then have to go back in and do. So I usually get about 3-4 coils high and then start smoothing it out. So what you're gonna do is use one hand to kind of cradle. I'm not adding a ton of pressure because I don't wanna mess up my coil form, but what I'm gonna be doing is using a tool to help smooth all of this. So you can see I'm gonna be taking some of these spheres and kind of moving it down and around as I go. So it's gonna look real messy at first, but once I get it all nice and gelled, you'll be able to see the difference. So cradling the outside, adding a decent amount of pressure. My clay is really, really plastic right now. So you can see it's like wanting to stick. And if you have to, you can always take, like right here, I've got a pretty big gap. So I'm just gonna take a little bit of clay and put it in there like a Band-Aid almost to kind of help reinforce, because I don't want any holes. So I'm scraping up and down and to the side. And I'm rotating it so that I can really see as I go. And I'm gonna take another little chunk. I'm adding a little bit of water to it. what you can see now is there's really no visible lines in there, but it does have all of my blending marks. So what I'm gonna do now is take a little bit of water on my finger, and I'm just gonna go in, again, cradling the outside, and I'm just smoothing this out, because you don't wanna wait till the end to do all this, because it won't really work. And you can also take a paintbrush, use just a little bit of water, not a whole lot. And this will also help, because like right now I'm realizing I have kind of a divot there, so I'm gonna take a little bit of my really wet clay, kind of push it into that crease. Because we want our walls to be nice and even as we go. All right, so now you can see I've got the piece kind of smoothed out. I still need a little bit of work, but what I can do now is take a paintbrush and kind of clean up the outside. We're not trying to overwork this to where we lose our coils, because that's the whole point of this, is making a form using coil method, but also not overworking it and learning how to use gentle hands but being firm as you go. So learning how to be both at the same time. So I'm going through, smoothing this out a little bit. And as I work, if I wanted to use a hair dryer just to harden this up just a little bit so its form isn't so wiggly and my fingerprints don't keep making marks, I can do so. But I'm gonna rotate. And a banding wheel would make this even easier to do, which I may get one in just a second. So every 3 to 4 coils that you add, stop, blend the inside, keep the outside form, and just keep going until you complete your design. And remember, we're not wanting to see any holes whatsoever on the inside or looking on the outside looking in. We shouldn't see any light because we want this to be able to hold water. And I'm just gonna keep working this as I go.